just wait a few moments more before we get started, as people are pouring in. Please bear with us. Okay. I think we are getting ready, and I will slowly get us started. Hello to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I would like to warmly welcome you all to today's informative webinar about the Neuroscience Capacity Accelerator for Mental Health program. My name is Lars Christensen, and when I'm not serving as webinar moderator, I am the Executive Director of the International Brain Research Organization, IBRO. Before we proceed into the details about the webinar, I would like to acknowledge that this program is the result of a strong collaboration between IBRO and the Wellcome Trust that started with the launch of the first edition of the program last year. IBRO and the Wellcome Trust align in our strategic vision for investing in a collaborating global community of neuroscientists, and I'm grateful to Wellcome for their continued active support of this program and of IBRO. At the end of the webinar, we will share some links to information about ways to engage with other Wellcome and IBRO-funded opportunities and programs. In today's webinar, we aim to provide you with a general overview of the Capacity Accelerator program, as well as hopefully answer some of your burning questions. We will cover the topics listed here in the agenda, covering important practical information about the program, all the way to giving you an inside view on the review process and their priorities. As a cherry on the cake, we will also hear from a 2024 grantee about her experience from taking part in the program. We hope that today's webinar will serve to motivate many of you, whether you're LMIC based or not, to reach out to your colleagues in your region and globally to see how best to engage with and benefit from this opportunity. Today's panel of outstanding experts are here to help us get through the webinar. First, my knowledgeable IBRO colleagues, Dr. Rebecca Hadid, who is Director of Grants and Programs, and Adriatic Butici, Grants and Programs Coordinator with IBRO, will provide a quick tour of the Capacity Accelerator program and the intriguing complexities of the application process. This will be followed by two different reviewer perspectives from members of our Scientific Advisory Board, where first we will hear from Dr. Carolina Escobar-Briones, who is professor in the Department of Anatomy of the Faculty of Medicine of the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México. Dr. Escobar-Briones is also the current chair of the IBRO Latin America Regional Committee, also acronymed LARC. Following Carolina's presentation, we will hear from Jason Grant-Rolls, who, among other roles, serves as Strategic Lived Experience Partner for the Trust-wide Trauma-Informed Collaborative at the North London NHS Foundation Trust. He is also an advisor for the Culture of Care program facilitated by the National Collaboration Center for Mental Health. And importantly, Jason is a much valued continuing member of the Capacity Accelerator Scientific Advisory Board. Last but not the least, Dr. Makutso Lekoa, Senior Lecturer of Pharmacology and the Study Director of Client-Led Preclinical Toxicity Studies in Rodents at the Northwestern University in South Africa, will provide us with a glimpse into her experience as a Capacity Accelerator grantee in 2024. In addition to her research focused around the exploration of psychedelic African plants as potential adjunctive treatments to improve the efficacy of antidepressants in rodent animals, Dr. Lekoa is a previous Secretary General of the South African Society of Basic Clinical Pharmacology and is a current ex-co-member of the International Union of Pharmacology's Early Career Researchers Committee. So, during today's webinar, I invite you all to add your questions in the dedicated QA section of the webinar portal. You will see that on the bottom of your screen. We will try to answer as many of the questions as possible during the webinar, in particular during the allocated Q&A session towards the end. And with this introduction out of the way, please join me in welcoming Rebecca Hadid to get us all started with an overview of the Capacity Accelerator program. Please, Becky.
Hello, everybody. So good afternoon, evening, morning, everyone, depending on where you're joining from. Thank you very much for joining. As Lars has already said, my name is Rebecca Hadid, and I'm excited to introduce the Neuroscience Capacity Accelerator for Mental Health program, which, as Lars has already mentioned, is a joint initiative by the International Brain Research Organization and Wellcome. So today I will walk you through the program's goals, target audience, and the key components. But first, I'd like to start by setting the stage. So the first question we should ask is, why neuroscience and mental health? So mental health conditions such as anxiety, depression, and psychosis are major global health challenges. Yet neuroscience research in these areas remains underfunded, especially in low and middle income countries, or LMICs. By investing in neuroscience-driven approaches, we can help to bridge research gaps, improve mental health interventions, and drive innovative real-world solutions. So what is NCAM? The program's primary goal is to advance neuroscience research on mental health in low and middle income countries by funding meaningful collaborative projects that advance our global understanding of anxiety, depression, and psychosis. More than just research funding, NCAM focuses on capacity building by providing training, networking opportunities, and professional development to prepare grantees for future success. By the end of the grant, program teams will have strengthened their research collaborations, identified future funding avenues, and developed preliminary proposals for ongoing research. A key aspect of NCAM is its emphasis on lived experience in mental health research. Integrating these perspectives from those with first-hand experience enhances scientific rigor, relevance, and impact, which is something that we actively promote throughout the program. And by the end of the grant period, awardees are expected to have gained a comprehensive understanding of the value of incorporating lived experience into their research projects. So in this way, NCAM aims to create a sustainable foundation for neuroscience research in mental health and really drive practical real-world impact by ensuring that diverse voices contribute to global mental health solutions. So who should apply? NCAM supports interdisciplinary teams working on early-stage collaborative projects on anxiety, depression, and psychosis, with funded projects driving innovative approaches for early prediction, stratification, and intervention. So whether you're part of an established research team or embarking on your first collaboration, the program encourages diverse perspectives and collaboration between neuroscientists, healthcare professionals, educators, and patient advocacy groups to really maximize research impact and real-world applicability. So project leaders must be independent researchers based in or affiliated with LMICs, and they are the ones responsible for project execution. Collaborators can be based in LMICs or high-income countries, but they should bring complementary skills, expertise, and resources to the proposed projects. What's important is that partnerships should be equal and active, ensuring a meaningful exchange of knowledge and resources. So each selected project receives up to $60,000, covering research-related expenses, excluding salaries and overhead costs. But NCAM really goes beyond financial support by actively investing in grantees' professional development, ensuring that they gain the skills and the networks needed to advance their research and their careers. So through a blend of online and in-person workshops, grantees engage in targeted training sessions designed to maximize the impact of their work. Topics include successful grant writing and securing future funding, effective science communication and public engagement, development of leadership skills, and integrating lived experience in research. So this approach really ensures that grantees are equipped to continue their research beyond NCAM, attract future further funding, and drive advancements in mental health neuroscience. So in this slide, you can see the professional development activity timeline for the coming year. Grantees will begin in September with a virtual meet and greet, which was an opportunity for the cohort to connect, exchange ideas, and really start building those networks. In November, grantees will participate in a multi-day, in-person capacity building seminar in connection with the 7th Global Mental Health Summit in South Africa, which features hands-on training and expert-led discussions. Moving into 2026, our professional development activities continue with 2 virtual career development workshops, which take place in February and in March. And by the time we get to May 2026, we celebrate the end of the grant period and reflect on the achievements and the lessons learned throughout the program. Finally, the NCAM program as a whole will culminate at the IBRO World Congress in 2027, where all 3 cohorts will present their work, engage with the global neuroscience community, and explore future collaborations. So as you can see, NCAM is more than just a funding program, but it really is a catalyst for neuroscience-driven mental health research. By providing resources, training, and networking opportunities, we really aim to build a sustainable research pipeline that drives real impact. And so with that, I'll now hand things over to my colleague, Adriatic, who will walk you through the application process and the key requirements involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky, and hello, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are joining from. We'll now walk you through the application process as well as the application review steps for the NCAM program. So without further ado, let's start with the eligibility criteria. So first, what projects are eligible for this program? So in principle, and as mentioned, the NCAM program is open to researchers or clinicians working on projects that aim to enhance our understanding of anxiety, depression, or psychosis, as well as projects which aim to explore and identify new approaches for early prediction, stratification, or early intervention in these mental health issues. This program promotes collaborative research, and we are therefore looking for existing or emerging partnerships that bring together diverse expertise to a project. In order to be eligible for this program, the project leaders must reside in and be affiliated with an institution in one of the low and middle income countries, also acronymed as LMICs, and hold a principal investigator status in that institution. So now on your right side, you can see and scan a code which directs you to a list of low and middle income countries from where project leaders can apply for the NCAM program. What's important here is that the project leader has the experience and support structures necessary to drive and lead a collaborative research project. Their role should allow them to independently apply for grants and manage independent funding. To be considered an eligible collaboration, we require that the project involves at least one collaborator, and that collaborator has to be from outside of the project leader's institution. The collaborators may be from any country in the world, be that a low and middle income country or a high income country, and they do not have to be necessarily researchers. They could also be psychologists, educators, representatives of patient organizations, etc., but must show that they have an expertise which is complementary to that of the project leaders in order to collaboratively deliver an impactful interdisciplinary project. However, please note that if the collaborator is also a researcher, they will then also be asked to show that they hold the principal investigator status at their institution. To facilitate these collaborations, we have created the NCAMH Collaboration Hub, which is an online platform where potential applicants can connect with one another, share ideas, and find collaborators for their existing or new projects. You can join this group, which already has more than 200 members. You can join it now by scanning this QR code here on the screen, or by simply just searching for the NCAMH Collaboration Hub on LinkedIn. Now let's talk about the application steps. First, make sure you are aware of the key dates and deadlines of the program. So as you can see, the applications are already open and will remain so until the 30th of April this year. So you have another month and a half to submit your applications and prepare them well. The review process will take place during May and June, and we will announce the results very early in July. The application must be submitted through the IBRO grants portal, which is linked in the call for applications, which you can find on our website, or by scanning this other QR code. Next, I will briefly introduce what you need for a competitive application and what you should already start thinking about and preparing for your applications. So first, you will be asked to provide some professional details about yourself and your collaborators, then a project description, including a lay summary, which is more accessible to the wider public. Then you will be asked to provide some details about the collaborating teams, such as a list of members that will directly contribute to the project, how this grant would support your collaborating teams, as well as a few words about the research culture within your teams. Then you will be asked to note a specific grant amount that you would like to request from this program, which can be up to $60,000, as well as a detailed breakdown of the costs that you would like to cover with this grant and these funds. In the end, you will also be asked to upload the CVs of the project leader and collaborators, as well as confirmations of principal investigator status for the project leader, as well as for other researcher collaborators that you have in your project. So this is more or less all the information that you will be asked to provide in order to submit your application. We really tried our best to keep it as concise as possible for you, while also ensuring that we receive all the relevant information based on which we can ensure a well-rounded, fair, well-informed evaluation and grantee selection. Once your application is submitted, it will undergo a thorough review process. The selection of grantees follows a two-stage process. The first stage is conducted by the evaluation committee, which will assess the overall quality of the application. And at this stage, each application will be evaluated by 4 different reviewers. 2 of them will be neuroscience experts from the IBRO regional committees, as well as another 2 will be 2 lived experience advisors. They will evaluate the applications based on approved evaluation criteria, which are public and you can find in the call for applications that I mentioned earlier. I am happy to announce that in a few moments, we will also have Carolina Escobar speaking, who was a reviewer in this very stage in the last edition of the NCAMH program. So after the first stage, the applications are moved to the second and the final review stage, which is conducted by the Scientific Advisory Board, which conducts a final review of a short list of applications which rank high in the first review stage. The SAB, as we refer to the Scientific Advisory Board, also consists of neuroscience and mental health experts, as well as lived experience advisors. This board will ultimately make the selection of grantees, which the IBRO Secretariat will announce very shortly after. Jason Grant-Trolls, who was a member of the SAB in the role of lived experience advisor last time, will also speak after Carolina and give you some insider insights from his experience as a member of the SAB last year. But first, as I mentioned, I would like to pass it over to Carolina, who was part of the first stage review in the NCAMH 2024 program. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Well, I have been already introduced by Lars and now by Adriatic. Thank you very much. So in the first version of the NCAMH program, I participated as evaluator. At the present time, because I am chair of the Latin American Regional Committee, I will be member of the Scientific Advisory Board for the Neuroscience Capacity Accelerator. And today, it is my pleasure to share with you my experience as evaluator and to provide insight in how to elaborate a successful proposal based on the evaluation criteria that will be used by the evaluators to define the awarded applications. So in the first stage, evaluators, reviewers will choose the top applications and will select final awardees. For this relevant task, reviewers will receive written guidelines that contain the evaluation criteria that we will revise right now. These evaluation criteria are classified in categories that aim to unify that all the projects are inspected in a similar way. Thus, for you, the first advice is to carefully read the indications for each of those evaluation criteria, because our evaluation sheets contain them, and we will use those as our guideline through the process of evaluation. So here we see the different categories that will constitute the evaluation criteria. The application format will provide enough space for you to be explicit and clear for each one of those categories. And now I will go through some of them and explain them a little bit more. This rationale and potential for impact, you will need to tell the reviewers why your proposal is relevant, whether it covers specific needs of your region, of your institution or population. You may want to indicate whether you will cover specific gaps of general knowledge in the field of depression, anxiety, or psychosis in mental health. Studies that were received for the first version of the NCAMH in 2023 had different approaches. Some were purely experimental, preclinical. Others were purely clinical, directly approaching specific groups affected by depression, anxiety, or psychosis. And others were combined. Independently of the approach, it is important to emphasize that you are employing a neuroscience approach to contribute to the understanding of the program. Studies using mathematical, humanistic, artistic, or other methods can be complementary, but they need to include the neuroscience. Otherwise, you will not completely fulfill the aims of this program. Successful projects were clear in indicating the aims of their project. They were clear in indicating how their study would provide strategies to intervene as early as possible to improve mental health. Also importantly, whether they were preclinical or clinical, it was important to specify the potential to translate the results into the application for a population and to solve the intervening or to the prevention of the problem. The project plan and methodology is of utmost relevance because it informs evaluators how the groups involved in the project will reach their aims. Proposals should detail how and when they will perform their interventions. What is the target about population? It should be describe the inclusion criteria. The study design and data analysis should be very clear, adequate to reach the aims. In my previous experience as reviewer, successful studies contain several techniques provided by both participant or several participant groups. The multidisciplinary approach was very well perceived. Even more, well-evaluated projects included state-of-the-art techniques. The participant groups have normally their own research lines, which represent the work of many years before and they even look up for the years that follow. Importantly for this program, the interventions should provide results in 9 months, should be specific for this project. Therefore, a clear organized timeline for the experimental design will let the reviewers know whether the aims will be achieved for the specific program in the specific interval. The collaboration in an NCAMH program is prioritized. This collaboration may already exist, however, it may be a new experience that based on this program will last for a long term. Importantly, we expect that both participating groups provide their expertise in the combination of their work, and that this should lead to the final results. It is a big mistake to center the project only in the expertise of one group and to allow other groups just to be observers or to be advisors. Both groups should provide their research expertise. For the budget, as it has been already detailed, it should be elaborated to cover expenses necessary to achieve the aims of the project. Do not include expenses to run all the research lines of your group. We may clearly see that your expenses should solve the aims of this specific program. Also, do not cover only travel costs for the participating groups. Even if you are far away, it should be important that you also cover the activities that will approach the real experimental problem. Moreover, check carefully which eligible cost can cover IBRO. The evaluators will elaborate a narrative and summary to hand it over to the Scientific Advisory Board for the final election of awardee projects. Therefore, it is relevant that all sections of the application must be clear and congruent enough for the evaluation committee to write a compelling summary on your behalf. An example of a compelling summary of a successful project stated: this project fulfills the aims of this program. The study will have clear target for population and will elaborate quick strategies to intervene as early as possible to reduce the problem. Both of the lead groups and the associate group have vast experience in the activities here proposed. The timeline steps are congruent and clear and have rationale that suggests that they will succeed in the short term. Hoping that my suggestions will be helpful for your application, now I will hand the word to Jason Grant-Rolls, who will tell us with more detail what it is about the lived experience engagement, which is one of the most impactful evaluation criteria. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Carolina. Yes, welcome everyone. Real honor and pleasure to be here. So my name is Jason Grant-Rolls. I'm the lived experience expert in the, and I was part of the Scientific Advisory Board for the first round. So Back again. So just for those that may not know, so when we talk about lived experience in relation to mental health, lived experience is the knowledge, the insight, and the expertise that comes from having first-hand experience of mental health challenges, either as a patient or a carer, now or in the past. The ways we can involve lived experience in research projects. So colleagues are probably familiar with research participants. So we're talking about going to the next stage, really. So some examples are you could have lived experience advisory groups. So these are people that are willing to help you advise on your research study. You can have actual collaborators. So you can employ people with lived experience as research assistants to help with analysis, for example. You can employ expert advisors, so you could have lived experience as part of the trial steering committee, or you can have co-applicants as well, and that's obviously what we're aiming towards in terms of giving you the kind of breadth and the range of how lived experience can be involved in research projects. It's really important to emphasize the practical ways that people with lived experience can be involved. So what we mean is, thinking about consultancy fees, travel costs, expenses, salary costs if you're employed collaborators, and people being named in publications. And for me personally, I think it's really important to acknowledge and recognize the people with lived experience who are helping with the research programs. So some examples of good practice. So people with lived experience are meaningfully involved at multiple stages of research. This can include, coming up with conceptual ideas, the planning, the designing, the delivery, and the dissemination of the project. And as I mentioned earlier, think about lived experience perspectives across the whole project. So from leadership and governance roles as well. So what really makes a good application? So we are looking at how the research project can have a lasting impact, how it can be practical and be widely accepted in its findings. We will all review specific plans for lived experience if the applicant clearly includes them in their proposal. However, there is no requirement for lived experience involvement because I think, as colleagues have mentioned earlier, the idea is that if you come onto this program, your capacity for developing lived experience will be completely enhanced. So we're not going to give preferential treatment to those applicants that do include it. Just as a few acknowledgements, so there's some more information about involving and embedding lived experience expertise in mental health research on the Wellcome Trust website. The link is there. There's also a paper. It talks about how lived experience can help neuroscience become more relevant in mental health. And lastly, just to acknowledge that I am a new NIHR, so Maudsley Biomedical Research Centre and King's College London PhD studentship in patient and public involvement and engagement in research. And those are my contacts afterwards. I will now hand over to Dr. Mahokso Lakoa.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Mahokso Lakoa. I'm based at the Northwest University in South Africa. And today it's a great opportunity for me as a part of the first cohort of NCAMH to share a bit of my experience during the program. And I'll focus mainly on two areas, the professional development program and also some hopefully relevant application tips that you could incorporate into your proposal to make sure that it could proceed to the next phases. So one of the things that I would like us to focus on in the name of this program, I want to emphasize capacity accelerating as what I want to build my presentation on. And really what the funder had paid a lot of attention to is to ensure that there are 4 pillars that will make sure that we advance, we are capacitated, and we accelerate both in our research and in terms of our neuroscience research and also professionally. So the first pillar that was part of the capacity building program was the secretariat. They were really efficient in terms of communication, offering us any type of support to ensure that the process was smooth for us. And for people like us who this was their first international grant, it was really appreciated to have such close access to the funder and be able to give clarity or give you a hand throughout the administering the program throughout the 9 months. On the other side, the two pillars were the professional development program. And as my colleagues mentioned, there was a virtual aspect which consisted out of webinars, of which us as the cohort also contributed to identify some of the key topics that could be covered, either to enhance our neuroscience research or to capacitate us in terms of being effective and better project leaders. So one aspect was virtual, and later, halfway into the program, we had a face-to-face or a live event in Vienna, as you can see on the top left there. And what was really amazing about this face-to-face was that the entire cohort could interact closely together and also interact with the funder and some of the stakeholders and the speakers that they had brought to the event to ensure that our neuroscience research will grow even beyond the 9 months program of the grant. So when it comes to application tips, as Carolina has mentioned previously, clarity is key. And I think as scientists, as much as we have a bigger perspective of how we want to contribute in neuroscience research, what is that one objective that you would like to build your proposal around? Because you only have 9 months to be able to generate data, to be able to get answers. So it's really important as a project leader to think clearly, what's the one objective that I would want to resolve? Number two, in order to be able to select your team, is this a new collaboration or is it already an existing collaboration that you want to enhance and strengthen? And based on that, who are the team players? Who are the skills? What's the multidisciplinary teams that you would want to align or collaborate with to help you answer just that one objective that you identified towards contributing towards neuroscience research and mental health? And the last aspect is the impact. What is the plan beyond the funding call? How are you intending to upscale the project and also to continue the collaboration beyond this phase? So just to illustrate how we did it, how we did it in our project, in terms of the team, I was based in a low and middle income country, and the other project leader came from a high income country in Germany. And we also had lived-in advisors. In our case, this was a new collaboration. And because we wanted to create pilot data looking at the 9 months time frame, hence why we had one objective, which made the research. And along with that, we had a mobility to kickstart this new collaboration so that by the end of the funding period, we can have pilot data that is publishable, whether we can present it at conferences, but also through a manuscript. And the last part in terms of impact and upscaling, along with our project, we had a master's student that was affiliated to the project as part of capacity building. And that student ended up participating in the IBRO regional school late last year. And the last part of our expected outcomes, we were intentional to build in a concept note, which was a way for us to already have plan ahead to say, with our new collaboration, what's the next phase? How can we have a concept note that we can use to apply for other joint grants, and also to ensure that we can continue the collaboration even beyond the time frame of the NCAMH. So I would like to thank IBRO for the opportunity and for the grant and Wellcome. And on the left, that is the team members that were part of our project. And now I'll hand over to Lars.
Fabulous. Thank you all for your presentations, and thank you for the great questions that we have received. Some of them are being answered as we're speaking, and I invite you all to both, of course, put in your questions and then check in the answered section where you can see some of our answers. And I encourage our panelists, obviously, to also go in and try to see if we can answer as many of those questions as possible. But sort of to get us started, and I would like to just put you, Jason, on the spot, because we have a very, very concrete question about that sort of goes into how does an LE expert evaluate a basic research proposal?
Yes, thanks, Lars, and thank you for the question as well. So, when I think about this question, I probably do not know anything about basic research in neuroscience. So I'm not a scientific expert. I've never studied neuroscience, actually. So the thing for me is that I'm not even trying to evaluate whether or not it's actually a good proposal based on scientific criteria. I think what's more important for me is this: can I read what it is that is being proposed? So is it comprehensible? Does it make sense? Does it tell a story to me? And am I learning something through the application as well? So I think last time around, what I really appreciated is that I got to learn about neuroscience just from reading the applications, right? And I think for me, as a lived experience person, as part of the committee, that's where I'm coming from. So is it comprehensible? Is it clear? Does it make sense? Can I imagine what is being proposed there? So if it's too kind of, scientific, I'm sure the scientific neuroscience colleagues will be able to comment on the validity and viability of the proposal. But I think from my perspective, it's more about the comprehensiveness really, and whether it's clear.
Great. Thank you, Jason. I think that is very clear, and obviously we are all sort of, I guess, no matter how basic we are going in our research, we can link that up to a condition. In this case, we sort of have defined the conditions that we would like to support projects within. So there has to sort of be that link in any case, and we would like to have LE experts be able to understand that and see that there's a link with whatever it is that you're proposing to an outcome that would potentially in a future be beneficial to the LE community. Perhaps I can ask Becky, because we do have a question or two also sort of going about scientists that are not LMICs, and I know it's something we have talked a little bit about, making sure that is clear. What is it we expect from co-IPs, and how do you get involved, and what is in it for you?
Hi, yes, thank you, Lars. So one thing to remember about this program is that it is all about collaboration and capacity building. So one of the main things that we hope that everyone gets out of this program is really it's the active participation piece. So we understand that behind the scenes, there's often a lot of collaboration and talking and emailing and research going on. But what we are really looking for is active participation in the professional development program. In terms of preparation and attending and actively participating. And this all comes back again to the capacity building piece, where the expertise from the scientists or the collaborators from the higher income countries or those that have received more funding in the past, being able to share those experiences and pass on that expertise to other members of the cohort is very helpful. And we also hope that those particular individuals would also have something to gain by learning more about the perspectives from other countries and from other researchers as well. So that's the main thing.
Yes, absolutely. We're not here to educate a particular subgroup called LMIC researchers. We are trying to enrich our community, and obviously with that exchange between people across the world, which I think was in our first edition last year, very, very useful and beneficial to all participants. So we do want to encourage everybody, also for those of you that are not located in an LMIC, to potentially think about ways to get involved, and that could be through the link to our dedicated hub on the LinkedIn, where you can meet people that have introduced themselves within their projects, or you may know of scientists or researchers that come from countries in your field that could be eligible. And the way that I was just saying on the budget side, the way that you allocate, or you propose to allocate the costs, is really sort of up to what makes sense. And I think perhaps you, Carolina, you can talk a little bit more about sort of the evaluation of the budget side, because I think it's clear that it's driven, let's say the budget is hosted at the LMIC institution and managed by the LMIC researcher, but it could benefit on both sides. Is that correct, Carolina?
Yeah, well, the leader group will take care of using the money. It is important to say that we will read the whole proposal and see what could be the possible cost of what the group is suggesting, and then understand how much of that should be given to support the work of the other group, etc. We revise the techniques, we revise the timeline in order to understand more or less how the money should be managed. But indeed, the leader group will have to find an agreement with the other groups in order to split the money and to support also their activities.
Yeah. Makoto, could you comment on that from your own experience? I don't know if you shared the budget or how you managed the budget, but you obviously had your German participant.
So what we did in our case, 100% of the money was received in our institution, and based on the work that was going to be done, a lot of the work was done by us in the LMIC and the different aspects. Then that money was sent to Germany because it would have been tricky. So based on your institutional dynamics, that will help you to. It was easier for us to send the money once off to minimize costs and all of that, so that they can be able to buy reagents and so on, because our study was more in the basic research. And similarly, with a lot of the travel was from our side, because we had a lot of workshops in South Africa as part of the project. So that's sort of how we did it. So I think it's important that both project leaders that are collaborating to understand the different dynamics within the institution of moving money from one institution to the other. So that should be mindful of.
Yeah, that is whole institutional dynamics, as you say. That is certainly interesting. Not a topic for this particular webinar, I'm afraid, but I would like to sort of ask, perhaps Adriatic, you can comment about the requirements for applicants, because we do have some questions that address the issue. Is this, what is a PI? Is it only for PIs? Can, an undergraduate obviously sounds, it would be interested in participating in this, a master science student, people from the private sector. Can you work with artists? I mean, there are many interesting questions around who can get involved in this.
Thank you, Lars. Yes, as I briefly mentioned during my presentation, being the project leader of the project is a bit more limited in terms of eligibility and who can be that person, because they have to be a resident of a country, of an LMIC country, as well as affiliated with an institution there, and hold a principal investigator at that institution. But then about the collaborator, the collaborating partner can be anyone. They can be from anywhere in the world. They can be from any type of profession, as long as they can show that they bring additional added value, additional expertise to the project, something that maybe the team of the project leader doesn't have within them. So artists, psychologists, representatives of patient organizations, as I mentioned earlier, they can all be an eligible collaborator for this program. Master students as well, in principle, they are eligible collaborators as long as together with the project leader, they can show that that collaborator brings something new to the project, brings some added value to the project.
Thank you. Yeah, and obviously there is a little bit of an important aspect there, that if you are an undergraduate, you would be well advised to work through your supervisor of your program in any case. So that is obviously something that is important. There are other questions here. Perhaps Carolina, would you mind elaborating a little bit about when you talk about there should be in the application a sort of a neuroscience approach that is being evaluated? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. So experimental studies use a series of techniques that explore how the brain is participating to elaborate behavior. In this case, we are interested in studying depression, anxiety, psychosis. So there are specific experimental models to observe depression, anxiety, psychosis. So to use those models, we are thinking that they are considering that in those models, the brain is participating. But there are also techniques to explore the brain that can be electrophysiology, that can be anatomical techniques, pharmacological techniques to modify the function of the brain. And so for experimental studies, it would be, let's see, expected that there is something of one of those methods that we see that the brain is explored in a certain way. When we study populations or we study individuals, there are also techniques in which we can observe the function of the brain. One is electroencephalogram, for instance, that we can see the electrical activity of the brain. We can also use imagenology. There are several techniques to observe the brain working at the time that it is doing something. And there are also some tests that are more specific to observe neuropsychological or neurological features of a person that will tell us how the brain is working for that person. So it would be good that the group, however it is built, they consider to include something that tells us about the brain. The brain for prevention, the brain for intervention, or the brain just to understand the mechanistic of the process. As Adriatic was telling, the collaboration groups, they can come from other specialities, and they can come from social, environment, humanistic, artistic, mathematical, because they may then incorporate additional techniques and approaches. But let's say that the main group or the main approach should contain something about the brain.
Yeah, and I think it's important to in that context, of course, to emphasize the link to the areas that we are interested in funding, in particular here, that we do encourage you to really make that link clear to depression, anxiety, or psychosis in a broad sense. But it does have to sort of have something to do with it. I was just curious, perhaps we can just briefly ask you, Becky, to reiterate what it takes for a high-income country collaborator to be involved, and there was a question again on whether they could, I think, carry the funding and be a leader in the field.
So the special thing about the NCAM program is that the project leader is the one who is based in the LMIC. So they are the ones who submit the application. They are the ones responsible for the overall execution of the project, but the collaborator and the project leader obviously work together towards the goal of their project.
Yes, thank you. That's very concise. And then in sort of the last minute or two, perhaps, Jason, in your sort of broad experience in being involved in many types of research projects, can you sort of, is there a red thread in the way that, because I'm sure this is not the first time you've been asked, what's the value? Are there sort of, can you just spotlight that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Niall. So I think the crucial value is when research projects involve people with lived experience, the results and the findings, generally speaking, have more applicability to the population. So people are more likely to kind of understand what the intervention is. They're more likely to take part in that, you know, in the trial, and they're more likely to have the improved outcomes from being involved in the research project. And you can tell it straight off from a mile. So, I mean, mainly my area of research that I've been involved in has been applied mental health research. Is mostly what we've been involved in. So I've not really been involved in neuroscience projects per se, but I think the principles remain the same, really.
Thank you. Thank you. Then perhaps, Mahotso, if you could just on that point again, sort of say, what did you learn last year that you didn't know?
There's so many learnings. I really think, first of all, from the way the program was run, it gave me a different perspective, because previously I had only had national grants which were administered differently. But being part of IBRO and how things were done really exposed me to a different way of running research and what's possible. And that enhanced our neuroscience research in what we can do. And also being part of the cohort, it was so diverse. I'm in the basic science aspect of it. Some people were 100% clinical, some had a bit of both. And that really opened my mind into possibilities of how we can enhance our research and make it extremely multidisciplinary. And I think that one of the biggest things for all of our cohort was we're not quite sure how to integrate lived experience advisors or community within our research. And the program really enhanced our ability. There was a lot of webinars and even at the face-to-face event to help us and capacitate that in our studies. For example, as a basic researcher, I wasn't sure how I would, incorporate and work with someone like Jason. But now going forward in our concept notes, already from inception, the lived experience advisors are part of modeling our proposal to make sure that it's really inclusive, because there's certain things that us as scientists look at that it's very easy to look over or to be unaware. So that's part of the benefit, to make sure that going forward, even in our department, we share that it's critical, whether basic or clinical, to incorporate lived experience at any point or any stage of the program of your research.
I think that was a perfect note to end today's session on. And I just want to remind you all, first of all, I would like to thank our panelists. And I would also like to thank and acknowledge, of course, Angeliki Lawrence, my colleague from Brussels, who has been managing all of this behind the scenes. I would like to inform you all that this webinar has been recorded and we will share it through our regular channels over the coming days, and we will integrate your questions that were great. Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you for attending. We will integrate your questions into our FAQ section on the website, so you can find questions or answers to those questions that were posed and that we didn't manage to get to today. So thank you very much, and thank you for attending. Bye-bye.